Hi, in this video we'll be looking at distance, rate, time problems. Now a lot of people have a really hard time with these problems because they tend to seem really confusing. So I'm going to go through some stuff that I think might make it easier to tackle these problems every time you see them. Alright, so let's take a look at this question. Tara left college and traveled towards her home at an average speed of 36 miles per hour. Sometime later, Nicole traveled the opposite direction with an average speed of 72 miles per hour. After Tara had traveled for 5 hours, they were 252 miles apart, and we have to find out the number of hours that Nicole traveled. So for these problems, I suggest always draw it out. It makes it easier to visualize all the information that they've given. So they're both starting from the college, and Tara is traveling that direction, and Nicole is traveling this direction. And we know that once they finish traveling, overall, they end up 252 miles apart from each other. So this whole thing overall is 252 miles. And just so we have everything on one diagram, Tara is traveling 36 miles per hour. Oops. And Nicole is traveling super fast the entire time, 72 miles per hour. Okay, so now we have it all in a way that we can picture. And you may notice that I have some stuff on the side of the page over here. So let's talk about what this is. I use a circle every time to help me to figure out these formulas. So these three formulas are the three formulas that you use consistently in these distance, rate, time problems. And the three formulas really is just one formula rearranged. So in order to see that formula, the whole thing, all versions of it, I think it's helpful to put it in a visual. Some people use a triangle, I use a circle. Distance is on top. Distance divided by speed gives us time. Distance divided by time gives us speed. And speed multiplied by time gives us distance. So being able to visualize all three versions of that formula, super helpful in order to finish these questions. So for every person in the question and every trip that they do, I think it makes our life easy if we have one of these circles to represent. So there's Tara's trip and there's Nicole's trip. So I'm going to go ahead and put a circle down for each of them. So let's get that circle there and one for Nicole as well. All right, so we have Tara's circle right here, and we have Nicole's circle right here. And these circles will describe both of their trips. Okay, so what Tara did is she had a speed, as you can see, of 36 miles per hour. So I'm going to go ahead and put her speed right here where the speed goes, 36 miles per hour. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for Nicole. Her speed was 72 miles per hour, so we can fill it in here in the speed section, 72 miles per hour. Now, we also know a little bit more, or do we? We know that Tara traveled for 5 hours. So here the question tells us Tara traveled for 5 hours. So now we have enough to put a second item in Tara's circle, which is super helpful to crack everything. So remember from our original formula, speed multiplied by time gives us distance. We have Tara's speed, we have her time, which means we can calculate her distance by multiplying those two numbers. So when we multiply 36 by 5, we get her distance, which is 180 miles. Now, that means Tara, and this is how the diagram helps us, Tara traveled 180 miles from the college to her home. We know overall the distance between the two ladies is 252 miles. We know that Tara's distance that she covered is 180 miles. So to figure out Nicole's distance, we have to take 252 and subtract 180. So when we do 252 and subtract 180, it tells us that Nicole traveled 72 miles overall. And again, just to reiterate, that 72 plus the 180 is the total distance between them. So now I can go ahead and fill in Nicole's distance of 72 miles. Now we have enough where, since we have two things in our circle, we can go ahead and divide to figure out the time that Nicole took. So 72 divided by 72 gives us the time that Nicole took, and that is what the question is asking for, the number of hours Nicole traveled. Nicole traveled 1 hour. All right, so this question is a relatively, I would say, medium level difficulty question. It does get a little bit harder when they start to ask about the relationship between certain things in the question. And so let's go ahead and do one of those harder questions. All right, I have the full solution here, so let me delete that so you don't see it. All right, don't look. All right, let's just move that away. Okay. All right, so now we're not distracted by the solution that's already there. So we have two people in this question already. We have Mia and we have Zach. Maybe you've seen the movie or the series. So Mia left the mall and traveled north at an average speed of 30 miles per hour. Zach left 2 hours later and traveled in the same direction, but with an average speed of 50 miles per hour. How long did Mia travel before Zach caught up? So again, there are two people in this question, so we're going to go ahead and put two circles down so that we can visualize both people's trip. So each person has their own circle for their trip. So let's make that Mia's circle, and let's make that Zach's circle. Okay, so Mia left and traveled at 30 miles per hour. So remember that, or 30 goes in the speed section. So we're going to go ahead and put that in Mia's speed section for her question. All right, Zach, we know also his speed, and his speed is 50 miles per hour. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Now, one thing that we didn't do that I advised us to do is let's go ahead and draw this out so that we can see what's happening, so we don't have to look back at the question for every single piece. So the mall is here. Mia traveled north, so that's Mia's trip. And we know that Zach actually traveled in the same direction, so we're going to put Zach here. And we know that Mia's speed is 30 miles per hour. And we know that Zach's speed is 50 miles per hour. And what else do we know? Do we know anything else? We know that Zach left 2 hours later than Mia. So we don't know how long each person took, but we do know that there is a relationship between the length of time it took Mia and the length of time it took Zach. So Zach took less time than Mia did because he traveled 2 hours later. So if Mia took X hours, that means Zach took X minus 2 hours because he traveled later, so 2 hours less. Now, it seems like we don't know much. We don't know the distance either, which is problematic, but not as problematic as you think. We do know that Zach caught up to Mia, so whatever distance Mia traveled is the exact same distance that Zach traveled because they caught up to each other. So we do know that the distance should be the same. All right, so there are a lot of unknowns here, but there is enough to tell us because we do know that that distance is the same. We can go ahead and set up an equation using that fact. So recalling that the relationship or the formula that's given here is that our 30 multiplied by the x gives us distance. And on Zach's circle, the 50 multiplied by the x minus 2 gives us his distance. We have there we go. So we know that those two distances are the same, which means that, now setting this up, 30 multiplied by x, so 30x is the same because that distance, Mia's distance, actually I'll write that down just to make sure. Mia's distance equals Zach's distance. I think that might be helpful. So 30 times x is equal to 50 times x minus 2. Mia's distance is equal to Zach's distance. So there we go. So now we have an equation that we can actually solve. So 30x is equal to, and that should be 50. And now we can distribute, or 50. So we get 50x minus 100. We can go ahead and subtract 50x from both sides. And we get that negative 20x is equal to negative 100. So one more step here. Clear the page there. We can now go ahead and divide both sides by negative 20. And we get that x is equal to 5. So now we want to go back to the question, make sure that we're actually answering what the question is asking us. It says, how long did Mia travel before Zach caught up? So we want to know what's in Mia's time, and our x is 5, and that's actually already what we want to know. If it asked for Zach's time, we would have had to subtract 2. That is not 50. Let's fix that. That is 5. There we go. So we know that Mia traveled 5 hours because that is x in her circle. All right, hopefully that made sense. These questions are complicated when you don't know how to do them, but when you do have this visual, I find it much easier. So hopefully that's helpful to you.